Hi, welcome to the New Property Show. I'm Steve McMenamin.
On this show, Steve, young broker Zach talks to us about his 15 property investments. Rory talks to the Victorian Consumer Affairs Minister, Gabrielle about the current state of affairs. But first up, Sienna from Upscale Property.
Hey Sienna, welcome to the New Property Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here today.
You've been in business for, a little while now?
Yes.
How long?
Different aspects. So Upscale Property has been in business for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a growing property buyers agency business.
And you came down initially, you've moved down from Queensland, is that right? Or
Correct, yeah. So the business has been operating in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and I'm down in Melbourne now.
How are you enjoying the weather?
That's definitely the top question.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing was actually sunrise.
Yeah.
So up there, the sunrise is 4:45 a.m, go to the beach, whereas I don't think it was coming up at like 7:30 here.
We
so that
hit
was
snooze here.
the adjustment, yeah.
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
And what are you finding though? Look, I feel the cold actually makes people make decisions quicker. I do feel Queensland sometimes a little bit behind.
I would disagree. In the property space.
Yeah.
It's a very fast-moving market up there in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Properties can go live and within 24 hours have an offer, and the sellers are willing to accept as well. So I guess that's where off-market properties become competitive too.
I love it. And what's brought you down to Melbourne? Are you still dealing with your Brisbane clientele and all that sort of things?
Yeah, so we do actually have quite a few clientele down here in Melbourne that are purchasing investment properties in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, or also we're assisting them with relocating up there as well, so buying their dream family home. And then also down here we're looking to also assist people purchasing their family home in the Melbourne region.
And how many in your team so far, and how do you plan to grow it down in this area?
Yeah, so the team is all up in Melbourne and all up in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So the plan is, and ultimately like our name, Upscaled Property. So our plan is to scale. So grow a team down here in Melbourne, and that's why I have come down here. I'm very familiar with Melbourne, having lived here in the past for 8 years. I was more on the finance side when I was doing that of property. However, that's a plan.
And you're predominantly dealing with owner-occupiers here or investors?
So in Melbourne, owner-occupied,
Yep.
and then also Melbourne-based people purchasing investment properties in Queensland.
I think we like to get up to Queensland a little bit in the winter.
Yes.
And what sort of tips would you have for anybody wanting to buy a new property?
So anyone wanting to buy a new property, so I think having a very clear understanding of what your personal vision is for your life, so maybe even taking it a step back from property and understanding exactly how property is going to be the vehicle for you for your future.
Yep.
So whether that is getting the family home of your dream to have a family in and grow your family, or if property is for you to have investment properties.
The vehicle, yep.
As the vehicle for investment properties. So then just understanding what exactly is my vision, what am I working towards. Another tip is also, seems quite left of field, but it is your mindset. So what is your mindset coming into this? Because a strong mindset with anything you go into is going to set you up for success. And I guess another tip is also having a dream team by your side.
Yep.
So whether that is a buyer's agent, accountant, finance, in terms like a broker, because in terms of what your vision is, understanding that, it really is important how you do set up your finance to create that vision as well.
And you have those sort of people that back your team as well in Upscale?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So we have partners in terms of, we talk about the dream team quite often with our clients.
Yep.
So no matter what stage you're coming to us, we can definitely assist you in finding that dream team that's a perfect fit for you. And we have different people depending on what that person's doing. So someone that's a first home buyer would have a different broker that we recommend them to compared to someone that's doing investment or property development.
What about, as I said, we'd almost be against each other in business if we're working together, because obviously we're doing off the plan and we're doing builds, and necessarily you might not get paid for that because people can go and find their own agents, that sort of stuff. But are you for or against building?
I'm for building, as you understand potentially, that there is a supply and demand situation at the moment. And we do need the supply and infrastructure of more houses being built for the growing people.
I had that debate with somebody yesterday. they were really against building a new property, and because they're in real estate and they're buyers agents also. But I said, well, each property 20 years ago didn't exist. It had to start as a build. So at what point does it cross over to that we could do business? I said, you can build a property that's under construction, put it up for sale, and then a buyer's agent would come in, and it just sort of dropped for them. Like, well, really, at the end of the day, they're only dealing established. I'm like, well, that established property had to start with a build. And I think at the moment that Australia is in shortage. I think there is there's labour costs have gone up, there's significant costs, but I think there is some advantages in also still buying established back there, because the discrepancy at the moment, and we sell a lot up in Townsville, but some people go, I could buy a property up there for 400 grand that's maybe run down versus a build at 700 grand. I said, well, that's good, but the land price, you're buying the land. So with that said, when you're buying and you're buying for an investor, are you sometimes positioning deals for development as well?
So in terms of your question about the build, so we facilitate deals with developers as well. So we have a large amount of engaged developers. So we're out acquiring sites for them as well, and that varies as well. So it could be a splitter block, it could be a subdivision, it could be acreage. So it depends on exactly what that particular developer is looking for, and also the type of build that they're doing in the end. So how luxury is that build going to be as well. And then in terms of acquiring sites, we also do look at development potential too. So that's a way of increasing instant equity, whether that property is on a large lot of land and can be subdivided, or is a splitter block, which is even better.
Love it. So it's a great attitude to have, because at the end of the day, a lot of people just try and stay in their own lanes, and I think they should in terms of their expert, but it doesn't mean it's always necessarily right for the client. Like I am for build, but if in some locations you simply can't build, it just doesn't exist. And also I think there's a place for everyone. I think you speak incredibly well, and you've been an incredible guest on the New Property Show. We'd love to have you back again.
I'd love to come back. Thank you for having me.
Good job. Zach, welcome to the New Property Show. I've been eager to get you on this show, and there's a couple of reasons. I've met you a few years ago when, you're only 24 now, but essentially in my eyes, a kid. But there's a story to be told, and the story is the one of Zach and how he helps young entrepreneurs and property investors grow. I think this is probably one of your first interviews on TV.
That's correct.
But it's an inspiration, and you're really going places. But who better to introduce Zach than Zach? So Zach, who are you? What are you doing? And why are you here today?
Well, first of all, thank you, Steve, for having me. I'm Zach Amoor, and I'm 24 years old. So my story began when I came to Australia from a war-torn country as an immigrant, and from financial struggles, I've built myself from the age of 18 to 24 years old, from 0 properties to 15 properties, just to get my foot on the market and basically create wealth and financial freedom for myself. And my biggest motivator is my father, where he's been working day and night, 7 days a week, and he's just been my biggest motivator. And I came to a decision where I did not want to follow in his footsteps. I love his work ethics, but I did not want to end up where he ended up, working all the time. So I wanted to have that financial freedom and stability in life.
I think parents too are a good guide as much as we love them. And I'm sure your dad loved his dad and his dad loved his dad. They don't want to be in the same bit, but it takes a certain amount of discipline and strength to really break away from that family mold and become your own adult and adolescent and really push through that. But that's almost 2.5 properties a year is really sort of what you're doing since the age of 18. Where did you start in terms of your first property? And now you're up to 15. So talk to us about that journey.
So I was working as an electrical apprentice since 15 years old, and I was working in retail at the same time as I was an apprentice. And I always had a vision to having my first property as soon as I can. And, it all really started at 14 years old when I was in my maths class, and we had a substitute teacher, and he was talking about property with me.
Yeah.
And he said, Zach, I have 3 properties, and in the last 5 years, it's grew by $500,000. And that was really interesting to me. You know, I was making $40 a week. For a person to tell me he's making $500,000 in 5 years, that really inspired me. So when I was an electrical apprentice, I always had chats with builders. I was so, you know, interested in property. And I was looking at taxi drivers purchasing property with $10,000 deposits. 5 years down the track, it gets registered, and he's already pocketed $200,000 to $300,000 from a $10,000 investment.
That's the land holds. Yeah.
So I realised there's money to be made, there's wealth to be created. And that's when I saved enough for my first property at 18 years old, where I bought my first property.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I think that should be commended at the end of the day. It's going to be an incredible story that's it's still getting told right now. But one thing that I've noticed about you that is different to most individuals is you've sat at my tables, and typically I sit myself along some peers. But you've turned up to these events, so having the right mentors, the right financial advice, the right people around you, and not every single seating that you're going to go to is perfect, but the difference between what I've noticed is this: your dad worked hard and you're working harder, but you're also working smarter. So you're turning up amongst peers, and you've definitely 10x'd it. You know, the average Australian might own 2 or 3 properties in their lifetime, and that's it. So whereabouts do you want to go? So what does Zach look like at 30?
So at 30 years old, at the moment, I've got $7 million in my portfolio. So the whole strategy behind it is building passive income through that $7 million portfolio. So I want to be, when I'm 30 years old, I want to have that $20 million portfolio. And each year that goes up, you know, 7 to 10% per annum in appreciation growth. If it's $20 million, I'll be making $2 million a year, and that's my financial freedom goal in life.
It really starts compounding. I think
That's correct.
I think in your mathematics class you studied compounding.
That's correct, yeah. And it's just more of leveraging against each property, and I see it as it's just the numbers. You know, it's like Monopoly, and for people to get in the property market, they always have to look at it. To get into the right property, it's always the location, the yield, the infrastructure behind it, vacancy rates. There's always factors, and I'm always looking online after work, before work. I look online, I find new deals, and I try as best as possible to get them under market valued. And that's what envisioned me to have open up Amoor Property Group. And now I've been acting as a buyer's agent for the past 2 months.
Congratulations, and I heard about that move. I thought it was quite bold. You've moved out of Sydney, the hustle and bustle up to Queensland, and you're now a buyer's agent.
That's right.
Do you want to talk to me about what that business is going to do? And then there's you've got some sort of new thing coming out too that I need to know more about. I'm hearing something coming up, but I need to hear it from you.
Yeah, so with Amoor Property Group, I started it basically because as a 24-year-old owning 15 properties, I know I really can make a difference to show the younger generation that it is possible to get your foot on the door to owning an investment property. And it's not just having an investment property. It's basically setting up yourself in the next 5 to 10 years to have money in your pocket. And I need to teach that to the younger generation because they really don't know much about numbers. And if they can see a young kid done it, so that can they. And basically, I've recently joined the 1% Foundation. So have you heard of the 1% platform?
I should have, but no, I haven't. No.
Well,
What is this 1% platform?
Well, you just have to wait and see.
Come on. Tell us here.
The 1% platform is created by intellectual individuals, and it is a platform where we have 6 to 8 coaches all around the world, and they've built in courses from Airbnb to real estate, and I am one of the coaches into the real estate buyer's agency course. So thank you. And we've got e-commerce, we've got branding, we've got mindset, and we've got multiple other courses to get the younger generation in the right path. And this platform is not only in Australia, it's going to be all around the world. And since it's been launched in the past 3 months, we've already had 56 million views.
56 million?
56 million views. End of the year, we'll be launching on a full scale. We'll launch out the courses, but that's how much attraction we've been getting at the moment. It is owned by Mr. Al-Kabaisi.
Yeah.
He's a 21-year-old self-made millionaire, and he really had a vision to bring in high individual net worth people, intellectually sound, that are young, that are hungry and driven, to have their courses to the younger generation and be able to teach them how to get ahead in life.
I think that's excellent. So just to recap, so not only a property entrepreneur with 15 properties, a buyer's advocate now, but I think you've taken a leap, and the key to property really is who you surround yourself with, but is education. But so what we're going to be hearing in the next sort of 6 months is the 1% Club.
That's great.
Absolutely inspired. I definitely want to dig deeper into this. Is there room for the 40-plus-year-olds in this club?
100%.
Fantastic. So to the viewers that are watching, I definitely think they should to reach out to you. I'm very inspired by your story, and thank you for flying down from Queensland. I'm really impressed with how humble you are, and that's most important too. I think when acquiring property, depending on whatever you're doing it, and for your own purposes, but it's to help others. So can't wait to watch your journey, stand beside you and see you succeed. Zach, Amoor, great job, and we'll see you again soon on the New Property Show.
Thank you, Steve, for having me.
Today we're very, very fortunate to have Gabrielle Williams on with us today, Minister for Government Services, Public and Active Transport, and very importantly for the viewers of this show, Consumer Affairs. Minister, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
I suppose before we delve into the area of interest, which is consumer affairs for us, almost a decade ago you became a parliamentarian.
Yep.
What did you hope, or why did you decide to choose this life and become a member of Parliament?
Yeah, look, I think we all get involved in politics because we ultimately want to leave the place better than we found it. And I had a very strong passion for equity and social inclusion, and saw politics as a pathway to being able to achieve some positive things for my community.
Amazing. So cast forward to now, and you've been a minister for some time. You've changed portfolios. You've had a son, Rory, who,
yes.
great name. Congratulations on that. Is it what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, politics is a tough game. It's very busy. Now with a little person in my life, it adds to the level of chaos, but it's, it also reminds you why you're there. So
sure.
No, I'm loving every second of it. And, having had the opportunity to work in multiple portfolios as well, you get
sure.
a real sense of where the challenges are in communities and what role we can play in addressing them.
Great. So how long have you been now Consumer Affairs for?
Only since late last year.
Yeah, sure. So you're enjoying that as a portfolio?
Yeah, loving it. Yeah. I mean, it's detailed. There's a lot in it. There's a lot of challenges in it, particularly in the current kind of cost of living crisis that we're in right now.
Absolutely.
So it's a very meaty portfolio, and one that does stretch you intellectually.
I could just imagine. So on a couple of things in some really topical areas at the moment. One, obviously, we've got underquoting, so where a real estate agent might give a range of a price that they think a property might go for, and then the eventual price is significantly higher than that. You might have a real estate agent saying, well, I'm just trying to get the best price for my vendor. In a quick-moving market, it's really hard to predict. But then you've got, obviously, the buyer, or the potential buyer, feeling it's quite potentially dishonest and finding it quite frustrating. I know you're doing a lot of work in this space, so what's the government's view and where's all that heading?
Yeah, well, look, we announced late last year, and we've had in operation now an underquoting task force. It's important to note, though, as a part of that, and you've described sort of part of that behaviour, that just because a property goes for well above reserve doesn't mean it's a case of underquoting. Obviously, we're targeting a very specific type of behaviour, which really goes to a deliberate undervaluation of a property, and obviously that's not great for a buyer. They go in expecting that they're looking at something within their range, only sort of to discover that the property was never actually going to be sold within that range. So we're more focused on looking at that kind of more nefarious conduct in that sense, rather than limiting the ability of agents to deliver a good outcome for the vendor. So that underquoting task force has delivered some really powerful results. I think there's been over 1,800 sales campaigns monitored. There's been over $1.3 million in fines issued. There have been sort of auctions assessed. So Consumer Affairs Victoria will go out there and randomly turn up to auctions to look at whether they're being conducted lawfully. And in one particular case, only one so far, criminal proceedings were instituted in a particularly egregious case. It's yielded very good, I think, data as well, and an understanding about what's happening in the marketplace. But what I found really interesting about the data that's coming through so far is that more than a quarter of the reports to Consumer Affairs Victoria have actually come from other real estate agents. So it's the sector policing itself, because the agents doing the right thing feel undercut by the agents doing the wrong thing. And we know the majority of the industry is wanting to do the right thing.
Yeah, that's great. So that points to great outcomes. I mean, which is excellent, and I'm glad that it is the industry themselves trying to police themselves, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, and I suppose more broadly, what advice would you give to someone who wants to purchase what's set out, buy their first home potentially? Yeah,
look, be aware of your rights. Consumer Affairs Victoria do an incredible job in preparing materials that are easily understood, easily accessible on their website, that will step out the sorts of things that buyers should look for, to be aware of their rights and to know how to enforce them if they've got concerns that perhaps things haven't been done the right way. So I'd say first and foremost, jump on the Consumer Affairs website, have a look at those materials and just make sure that you're fully briefed on how a sale should be conducted and what you should be looking for, what information you should be availing yourself of as a part of that.
Yeah, and it is a great website. And I like all of those resources, plus the news section actually points out those agents potentially who have been doing the wrong thing. So the information is there and accessible, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Information is power.
Absolutely. So another area that I know I talk about a lot, and I know a lot of our viewers are keenly interested in, is investing in property. So and an investor comes into the market and they've got lots of choices with where they will buy. And traditionally Victoria's been a very strong market for investors. And I suppose there's a lot of noise around people moving to other markets to invest. There's some higher taxes here. There's and I think some of your work's getting roped into that around renters, tenants' rights. I'd love to hear your view on where do you think the investment market is going in Victoria, and I suppose how we can strike that right balance, because everyone wants renters to live in great homes, but we want investors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, a key feature of our housing statement that was announced last year was really around striking that balance and addressing what we know is an incredible challenge that we're experiencing right now with growth, but also that is coming our way. Melbourne's going to be the size of London by about 2050. It's a lot of people coming into our city and state, and we know that we need to build a lot of houses to meet that demand. And so you've got a target of 800,000 homes to be built over the next decade, but alongside that, a focus on how to deliver better outcomes for renters, because we know that renters are currently about a third of the market, but that's going to grow, and the pattern of rental behaviour is changing. We tend to think now of renters being uni students and young people, but what we know is that more people are going to be renting for longer and more people are going to be renting for the entirety of their lives. So how do we establish a rental market that reflects that changing pattern of renting? Obviously, in terms of having a rental market, investors are a really important part of that.
Absolutely.
And Victoria has long been a very attractive location, and I think it still is. Of course, with that means that our property prices tend to be a bit higher too. This is something that our purchasers of industrial land will talk about as well, because we are such a desirable location. But I don't think our focus on, for example, minimum standards with renting at all undermines our investor market, because what we're actually seeking to do is put in place some pretty basic standards, things that people would just naturally expect to have in their properties, and so I don't ultimately believe that impacts on the investor market at all. And I think there is a huge demand still to have people living in Victoria, as we've seen from the projections of the numbers that are of people that are projected to be here in the next 10 years or so. And with that brings a great, I think, opportunity for people to be building more homes, buying more homes.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And that's all for this week. Thank you for joining us. If you want to see the full interviews, check out our website, and we'll see you again next week.